Good afternoon, everybody. Today we are presenting the third talk of the Faenza Prize conversation, and we have the pleasure to meet Judith Schwartz with 5 artists. Judith, it's a great pleasure to have you here, and everybody knows you, but I would like to tell something about your story, short story. But a long story in the ceramic field and the art and the sculpture. Judith is a professor emeritus from New York University, where she taught sculpture for more than 30 years. She's the author of Confrontational Ceramics, and she has written on numerous artist reviews and catalogs. And she served as a juror and consultant to international competitions, and she is vice president of the International Academy of Ceramics. So welcome, Judith. The stage is yours, and enjoy this afternoon of artistic conversation.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Claudia. And I'm so happy to be here. I must say that during this particular show was a highlight of my experience. First of all, just focusing on installation and site-specific work, I think brought about a new field, a new entry of artists. And I found that to be very exciting. I think it really did expose new talent. And also, particularly in this time when we haven't been able to be on site, this has opened up a new possibility. I'm just thrilled to sit and talk with my artists today and in the future. And I think it's a wonderful way to get the artists to reveal their rationales and their backgrounds, and to become more open and receptive to the community. So thank you, Claudia, and thank you, the museum, for making a good stepping stone to a bad situation and turning it into a gem. And I think that's what this has been. So I would like to start now. Welcome all you wonderful artists. Congratulations for being accepted into the prize. And I know Jacqueline Finneran is in California, so it's early in the morning, and for a lot of us, we're all in different time zones. So thank you for being here. So Helmie, we'd like to start with you, and you've had a very long, illustrious career and a very provocative one. And I would love you to start now with your presentation. I asked each of the artists to share a little bit of their backgrounds and where they're living, etc., and to weave it into their talks. And if there are questions for any of you who want to know more about the artist in our conversation, just put it into the chat. So welcome, Helmie. Please tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm very honored to explain my story on this amazing ceramic platform. That's what I will start. And I'm Helmie Brugman, a Dutch visual artist. I graduated from the Academy for Visual Art in Tilburg. I live in Eindhoven, an international famous city where high-tech, design and art are connected to each other. I would like to let you see the video to see a view of my studio.
So these are life-size scale of these children, right?
Life-size. Yeah. And here you see my starting point is Michelangelo, the Pieta in Rome and the David in Florence. When I was young, about 13 years, I visited Rome, the Vatican and all the highlights. I was deeply moved, seeing the adoration and the consolation the people expressed looking at the Pietà. The perfection of the marble statue knocked me out. Such a symbol of love and suffering. A year later, the Pietà was brutally attacked with a hammer. Why did he do it? His mental illness was the cause of this destruction. Something invisible suddenly became so visible. And this inspired me to make the invisible visible. Since 2000, about 2000, the content of my work changed. Human existence became my essential theme. My Pietà souvenir from 1971 was my base character, a starting point of my visuals. My expression is form and deform in clay. Here you see the possibilities the EKWC workshop offered me in 2012 and 2013. I started as artist in residence with the clay research, discovery the possibilities and the impossibilities of clay. The edges of the clay gave me the insight of new opportunities. The broken parts or imperfected ceramics, reusable, reassembled. That's the core of what I'm doing. A mold of an ideal boy, based on David's Michelangelo. I reduced the Renaissance icon in an innocent child. A plaster mold makes it possible to produce series of ceramic Davids in a very short time. A different time and care for each boy. The visuals get their own identity and vulnerability according my treatment. In this installation, I mixed clay of different colors.
You can say next. That's fine.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah. The creative process is an essential part of my concept. That's why I have arranged this exhibition as if you were entering my studio. This, you see, also this installation also evokes associations with the Terracotta Army of China. Next, please. The process plays an important role in my work. That's why I make elements of the creation process a part of my work. Some Davids show the imperfection of the process.
Next.
The ceramic visual does not exist forever. It exists only temporarily, as life itself. During my research at the EKWC, I discovered that a ceramic statue can be fired at 1220 degrees, so the inner explodes. This ceramic installation broke itself down. Next. Next. Mold becomes sculpture or part of it. An assembly of new, reused, and mold. Next. In front, you see a white mycelium image at the left side. A fascinating, living, bio-based material, by the way. Next. What about us? The selected installation for the 61 Faenza Award. The black clay sharps the essential contours. My aim is to trigger and to create your own story. The sculptures symbolize the essential theme of love and suffering. In general, art for me is a way of expression that exceeds aesthetics. It's no longer the technique that dominates, it's the emotion and the form that matters to me. New materials give me new opportunities for my concept of art. So
Helmie, wonderful. Thank you. The work is incredibly powerful. But I have to ask you, which was really in a way disturbing to me when I look at it, that the work, the figures are so deformed. The heads are not attached. The children are wearing boots, in fact, and some of their limbs are cut off. And unlike the David, where it's very, pristine and carried to its nth degree, carried, meticulously created, there's a rawness and a deformity that's so strong. I'd like you just to explain a little bit more about what are these existential issues, especially in the title. What about us? Meaning as though they're not being heard or not being seen. Is that what you want to portray a little bit?
now it's a little bit what I say. I have titles make that as if the sculpture, this statue, make it by itself. This is what they say. What about us? I make it very personal. For me, is the clay statue when it's become the figure of the form of David, a little a boy, like a real people. But for me, it's what I say. It's more I give combinations, associations, and for everyone it can be different. For me, it's my story I tell, why I make it, how I make it, but I'm also interested to give a direction of a direction, but everyone can explain it, make it his own story of it.
Well, for me, the fragmentation of the way that you portrayed the figure is indicative of the fragmented way of our lives. Things are not always beautiful, simple, and but they are complex and they're very diverse. And thank you, Helmie. Thank you. This has been just wonderful. Thank
you very much.
And congratulations.
Yeah.
Our next speaker is an artist who I've known for many years, and I followed her work for many years when she first had a jewelry business for ceramics. Bean Finneran. Is she coming on now? There she is. Welcome, and thank you for getting up so early in the morning.
It's getting light here at last.
Bean, you're in California, aren't you?
Yes.
And you have an interesting undergraduate and graduate. You went to a lot of different schools, Michigan and Goucher, and then Mass College of Art.
And
I
then
found that
in school.
Right.
a restless person.
Well, you live in a very interesting part of the country and very close to nature. And I think one of the things that really come out about your work is how much they are attuned to nature. But I have some other questions about that. But let's get into your work and show your fabulous video.
Okay. And thank you to everyone for inviting me. I was very thrilled to be part of this exhibition. And I'm Bean Finneran. I live and work in Northern California, and we're going to play a video that has a narration that's not working. So I'm going to just attempt to chat over it. It's about 5 minutes, a little less. Okay, here's where I am saying what I'm doing, which is working with a single elemental form. It's a clay curve. They're all hand rolled, which is important to me. And of course, people ask me why I don't extrude it, but I really want every curve to be an individual curve. And what happens is I had spent all these years working with a single form and exploring what you can do with this. Like in this case, the red curves are laid down slowly on top of one another. And in other cases, this is a very early piece. I was just, as with this, I was taking curves out of the kiln and painting them with an acrylic stain. And as I had a box full, I would put them out on my deck and build. What I'm working on is a real reflection of my studio. I'm not there today, this morning, but I've had this for almost 30 years. It's on a tidal marsh, and so I get to watch the grasses and the waters change through the day. So the most important thing about my work is that it is always transformable. Like nothing is fixed in place. These are the clay curves before they've been bisqued. It's simple low fire clay, like school clay, because that's lighter than porcelain or stoneware. You can see then they were lined up in the kiln. I dip them in glaze on the tips and fire them horizontally. And then they're painted one by one with a brush. Because there actually is no other way to do it, since it's a curved form. You couldn't spray it. So what I work with is color, like in this case, because I use an acrylic stain. This is Valoris, where I had a wonderful opportunity in an old chapel to build this huge piece. But then these are the same red curves made in another form last year in Germany. So this is our theater company. My husband and I have a theater company, and that was before I even started doing the sculpture. So what I love is arriving. I'm used to arriving in a space and having it empty, and then deciding the best thing to do in that space. And that comes from my many, many years of touring with the theater. This was a nice space with a kind of low ceiling. And so I did an installation of just rings. And one of the things that, comes from my performance background is that I love working with people. We get people wherever we arrive to come and help us. And I always tell people when they take it down and I'm not there, to just have a party, get some pizza and some beer and take them all apart. They're very, very sturdy, these curves, because of the shape of a curve. I just ship these in boxes with thick layers of them. These are some black curves that I then, for this one show, I painted some polka dots on them. So I will take, it's like having a big bank of Legos or something. You can do different things with the curves, including painting them with tints or painting polka dots on them, or leaving them totally to be their own and choosing a form to suit the space. That's it. For the video.
Bean, you're one of the few people, I think, who really understand, I think because of your performance background, the immediacy and dance-like aspect of installing a work. And your work is in the moment, the way a fleeting moment would be when you watch a dance performance or a theater performance. So I think you come to the installation and site-specific aspect it very honestly, because it really is in your background. And the immediacy of it all is so great. What I wanted to ask you, because you live in this tidal marsh, and you see the grasses waving in the wind and all of that. I saw it right from the beginning, especially artists do reflect where they live and how they perceive the world. But I also have been thinking lately, maybe because we are so isolated, about these arcs being human beings that are sort of like the aspect that we're people that are all leaning on each other and making up a circle, and we're all one, but we need each other to lean on.
Holding on to one another.
Holding on to one another, because I put together some of those sticks, those arcs that you use, and you really realize how much every arc is dependent on the next one.
Right.
What do you think about that
interpretation? That's very interesting. I mean, I am, a dedicated abstract form person, but it's a really interesting idea to think about that in a whole nother way, like you were talking about as people. I mean, and to me, color is very emotional. I don't really need a person there, but I love that idea. I think that's really fascinating, and that's an interpretation that I love. That people can bring, their own feelings to these constructions.
I also like that when they're monochromatic, you have, the red is just so startling. Now, the work that you chose for the Biennale, for the Faenza Prize, was yellow.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Why do you choose yellow? I mean, for that insertion, why did you choose that particular color?
Right, that particular yellow. Well, I actually have loved yellow. My very first sculpture way back in my studio was a yellow cone on the deck. So I've been making, what I do is I keep making more and more of these. And then I'll send, for instance, this was in Germany, the pieces in a box. And it's about a half of the yellow I have, and I have more here. So, I mean, I don't really choose. I choose the colors based on what I love. I love yellow, and I love red, and I love white, and
no particular significance, just for Italy. For Italy.
Not that I could verbalize. I think it's just like, oh, I love that color.
Got it.
I want to see more of it.
Right. Well, I think you certainly bring a lot of happiness when we look at your work. I think color brightens our day. And I think the intensity of the way your work is constructed really shows that kind of fetish finish.
I know. I mean,
and that repetition.
I know people think, how can you keep doing that? But I find it wonderful. I do not have a problem, as strange as it would be to, another person to do something so
very meditative as well.
And
for some reason
yeah.
you broke up, but it's very meditative. Thank you, Bean. That's a wonderful, wonderful installation. Congratulations. And you really have added a lot to the Faenza Prize.
Well,
thank you for being with us.
To everyone there.
Our next artist, I'm very happy to introduce, is Noemi. Hello. How are you? Tell us where you are from. Oh dear. Stefania?
Yeah, now I think it's okay now. Can you hear me?
We seem to have a little breakdown in communication.
Judith, can you hear me? Because I think the rest of the participants can hear me. So
I can hear you now. Now I can hear you.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. I didn't hear you before. Please begin.
Well, my name is Noemi Iglesias, and I'm a Spanish artist recently working with ceramics. I graduated at the University of the Basque Country here in Spain in fine arts, and I specialize in sculpture, and I start also working with performance. But it wasn't until 2014 or 2015 that I started working with porcelain, and it was while I was working at the International Ceramics Studio in Hungary. And as my ceramics education, I just finished a master's degree at the Tainan National University of the Arts in Taiwan.
Well, you are also the under 35 category, the first.
Yay!
So we're very, very happy to have uncovered you as a newcomer to the field. So let's get into the work.
Thanks.
Stefania, yeah.
Well, this is the work I presented for the Faenza Prize, and it's called He Loves Me, He Loves Me Not. And it was a video performance I made while I was still studying my MA, and this was part of my residence in China, in Doha. And the performance is made with around 400 porcelain flowers. These flowers have been handmade, petal by petal, and they are unfired during the performance. So what I do is just this, this kind of game where you take one daisy and you tear up the petals apart, and you say like, okay, he loves me not, he loves me not. So what I intended with this performance was to use kind of like a mass production way of making, like this flower production, and using this mass production technique into something related to feelings, or intimacy. Because I think nowadays most of our feelings and intimate space is being treated as something you can quantify, you can buy, you can sell. So somehow that's what I wanted to express with this performance. Maybe we can see the other works now, Stefania. And after the performance, I fired all the daisies with the broken petals and everything, and that became like a kind of. This is the picture of the broken flowers already fired. We can go to the next one, please. This is the way I make the flowers. So I start with the center, and then I make all the petals, and I start gluing the petals around the center. This is a technique that it was performed by women during the 19th and 20th century in the European ceramic factories. And somehow it's a technique that is kind of disappearing from the factories, because it takes, it's like a very time-consuming kind of technique, and most of the factories have stopped doing this kind of objects. Next, please. This is some frames from the performance we we've just seen. So we can go to the next one, please. And these are some of the flowers I started making when I first learned how to work with porcelain and how to work with porcelain flowers. Next. These are some, I started also working with some firing techniques. So this one is like a wood fire porcelain flower. Next. And this was one of my last projects. It was called Quarantine. I made this project in 2019, just before the pandemic. And it really, at the beginning, it didn't have anything to do with this health situation we are all living now. And it was just a performance project with some online dating applications. And so I made a quarantine with one of the applications called Tinder, which is like a very famous application to get online dates. And next, Stefania, please. So I made 40 porcelain masks, and I use smoke fire to fire these works, and that's why they all have this kind of colors in between. Gray, black, yellows, and orange. Next, please, Stefania. So this is a view of the whole installation. And if you scroll a little bit down, so we can see some of the details of the mask. A little bit more, please.
I have one question about this particular work before we leave. Yeah. It's so powerful and so provocative. I mean, are you trying to tell us that we should be smelling more flowers in our life? You know, that the flowers are filtering the air, or
I use the roses, because if you look closer to the type of flowers, all of them are roses, and I always use roses as one of the symbols of the romantic capitalism. You know, because somehow we all associated love to the rose, and therefore they are more expensive. So more than pointing out something about someone who is wearing the mask, I was pointing out something more about how these roses have become like a, like this kind of symbol that has really nothing to do with the way we feel, but it has been associated to the way you need to act in terms of showing your emotions. So when I went, because I didn't explain the experiment because it's kind of long, but I made 40 dates with 40 different users of these applications of Tinder. So when I went to the date, I used a rose. So I gave a rose to all these potential boyfriends. So somehow I needed to make this flower part of the whole installation. Next, Stefania, please.
Art follows life, right? Art follows life. Or life follows art.
Next. Yeah, here you can see all the details of the mask, because each mask was individually crafted and individually fired. So even if it's an installation of 40 masks, they are all very unique. And this was some work I made also related to this quarantine project. So what I did was using the quarantine aesthetics, these bands of yellow and black lines that are right now are all over the places, telling you, please don't do that, please don't trespass this kind of place. So I use this aesthetic still with the roses. Next, Stefania. And this other work, it's called Rebel Heart, like Madonna's album. And in this work, I use roses and this other type of flower, which right now I don't remember the name in English. I think it's carnation, but I'm not 100% sure. And these two flowers are usually symbolize passion, and they also symbolize revolution. So I make like a series of pieces using these two flowers to talk about oh wow, there is 1 minute left. So I use these flowers to talk about love and talk about revolution. Please, Stefania, next. This was the view installation of this work. Next. And finish with this piece because we don't have much more time. And this is an interpretation of the lucky cat called Maneki Neko. It's like a very it's like a typical and very easy to recognize symbol of luck in Asia, but also in the Western world. So I did like a little bit of a mix in between gestures. So the cat is holding in one hand the Chinese symbol for love, which is called I, and on the other hand is holding the Western gesture of the finger up. And yeah. This other work, it's called Everlasting, and it was a series of wedding cards I made during my residence at the Guimei Clay Art Museum. And next. This is the view of the exhibition. Next. And this is just some of my very first works working with ceramics. This is an old factory in my hometown, and it was a ceramics factory that closed in 2009. So I went there when everything was already empty, and even it was set on fire. I mean, it was like a disaster. And somehow I went back there to with some plaster of Paris, you know, this kind of thing, this kind of material that usually the doctor use this kind of material when you break your arm or your leg. So I went with this material to take the mold of the situation, but also with this action I was trying also to kind of heal the wound that was open in the factory. Next, Stephanie, I think there's only just one left. This is the heart and tips. This was when I was still living in the UK, and it has nothing to do with ceramics, but I thought it was important to show also this kind of actions, so you can also understand a little bit more of the background I used in my porcelain work. It was just a raw heart of meat and chips. It's like the fish and chips, but heart and chips. Yeah, I try to use always some humor and irony in all my works. And the last one I'm going to talk about is the Summer Boyfriend Wanted. It was also a performance I made when I was living in the UK, and I was there to learn English, and I said, well, why not to get also a summer boyfriend? So I was just sending some advertising of the Summer Boyfriend Wanted, and that was the result I got from the performance.
I'm sorry, we will have to move on, but I do think your work, the fact that you're working now in a factory and reproducing the repetitive nature of these petals, I think it's interesting that you have that experience, and you bring a lot of power to these installations. Do you want people to walk and step over your petals in the work that's in the exhibition? If it were,
I would rather not to.
No, so that
no, they've been already broken with a reason and with a thought. So I think that's the way they have to be break.
Right, and so you're destroying the commodification of love.
Yeah, of falling in love.
Right, falling in love, right.
Yeah.
And all of its issues and problems. Well, welcome. Thank you, Noemi.
I think Claudia asked one question from the public, and they asked me why 40 masks. And it's because the project was called quarantine. So a quarantine is a period of time of 40 days where you isolate something, and so it's in a period of observation and experimentations. So these 40 masks are related to these 40 days where I was doing the experiment with the users of Tinder.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations, under 35. Wonderful to have you and discover you. Our next art, I had the pleasure of having at New York University many years ago when he did a residency with us. Welcome, Fausto. It's wonderful to see you again.
Hello, Judith. Thank you. I miss New York, actually, and NYU also. It was a very good time. So I'm Fausto Salvi. I live in Italy, in Brescia. And so first, I'm very happy to be selected to the Biennale and to be here in this conversation and presentation with you, Judith and Claudia. Thank you. And I live in Brescia. I used to live in many other places, not for too long time, but I used to travel a lot. As an example, in New York for NYU, where I was invited many times by you, Judith. Thank you very much again. And it was a very good time. And from not only New York, but also in many other countries, so that I miss so much now to be around. But I'm going to tell about this later. And so this image is pretty emblematic about my work, because I don't like so much the reassuring approach to life. So I like to go deeper into the dilemma in between love and pain, or love and pain, and comfort and hazard, and this dilemma where we are always in the middle, in between these two aspects. And actually, I tried to propose it as a wedding favor, but nobody wanted it, because for me, as an example, the relationship is clearly represented in this object. But now I would like to talk about the piece selected for the Biennale, which is female issues. And female issues is a big scale artwork, and it's in Maiolica. I use Maiolica because it's the Mediterranean technique, and I only work through this technique with low firing. And so it's representing so the meaning of this work is substantially a social meaning. So the vertical forms are representing the glands and physiological pipelines. So it's something physiological about the body, and the pink color is internationally recognized as a feminine color, and the material, I try to find some glazes which has a surface like a bit spongy, a bit like more organic, but in this image, you can see also a sort of cage, and this cage is represented by the society that, which is substantially a paternalistic society, who makes generally a female in terms of body and in terms of persons in this cage. But the form in the center, which has is a shape very archaic, which is representing a female. Is a sort of big vase, which is a container, which is always is intended as a female in terms of female, and anciently is intended as a guarantor of a renewer of life, because the female is a renewer of life and is always looking for something good in terms of society and life in general. And also in the next image you see a bit closer the work, which is a sort of arrows. And women has a lot of arrows in the arch, and in this case the images of each one is a flower, which is I thought it connected with the sweetness, the lance, the arrows, which is power, love, which is love. Airplane is a willingness to change, looking for something new and different. Wait a moment, please come back another picture again. Back, please. Okay. And arrows in the arch means a lot of potentiality, a lot of stuff to say, but actually the society is still being very close in the paternalistic way, and maybe this is the time, 2021, where maybe woman has to be much more, not say considered, but much more in power instead of man, because as we can see, the world is not going very well. So maybe it's time to try a different point of view. From this is my idea about, and this maybe this work is also maybe connected with the fact that I became a father very late in my life, but anyway, better late than never. And so you get much more closer to all these issues about female issues. That's why I thought to make this work. Just yesterday, talking about women in power, I read about Deborah Haaland and about a woman and about arrows, because she's a Native American, which is in charge now for the climate emergency, which I like it very much, because I remember the last year maybe Donald Trump did something very bad about gas pipelines in Indian territory. So this is what I'm talking about. So, and to read yesterday about Miss Haaland, and they make this work much more interesting to me, at least.
You know, so I just have to say that knowing your work over the years, and I was really so pleased to see this submitted to the show, because I've never seen you do such a large scale work with so many component parts. You've always been object oriented, you know, individual pieces.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
To see this come together as an installation, I think this is a wonderful case where the Faenza Prize competition brought out a kind of a pushing for you into a new realm. When I first saw the work, I didn't know whether she was in a cage or in a garden. But I saw your symbolism, the hearts, the airplanes, the things about the social condition that you've always put in your work. So let's review your work now a little bit, just so that people see your background.
Yes, the next image, coming back to my previous work, I like to work because I discovered ceramic in Faenza. So I learned how to do ceramic in Faenza, which means decoration. So I like the idea to put some ceramic, which is mostly considered as a shallow and harmless, like mostly considered like a decorative object, with the drawings that are talking about important issues. About generally, I'm working around the idea of ecological problems, of conflicts and contrasts. And I made every piece is a part of a series. Every piece is unique, but it's all anyways a part of a series. I never working in only one piece. So everyone is unique, but is made by is a part of a group of pieces. So, and next one, yeah, this is Squarehead. Squarehead is talking about narrow-minded people. So people who doesn't see much far away than their own garden. So, and I like as in this case, some topics like this are becoming like objects for daily life. Actually, I worked for Philip Stark projects, for many projects around the world, in Los Angeles, in Paris, in London, and in other places in France. Next, please. Yeah. This is a detail of the work, because in the beginning, I mean a few years, I started doing my work in ceramic. I used to paint every single piece. Then suddenly I realized that I had to change a bit. This is a part of a series called Landscape, which is a bas relief. It's made by, like a puzzle, it's made by many, many different pieces. And when they are all glazed and finished, I stick all together in a wooden support. Fly Love is another series of panels that are talking about to love to fly and to go in other countries to discover new mentalities and lifestyles. I used to travel a lot and doing many residencies, as I said before, in New York, but recently in Korea, Japan. I went to India also to do an artist in residence talking about graffiti art made in ceramics. So it was very interesting. And this is my way to discover a new country, never as a tourist, but as a worker, and getting in touch with the population, with the people, and just to understand better the mentality and work together. Wait a moment, Stefania, please. This is jet lag, which is connected with fly love, of course. Jet lag, everybody knows the feeling of jet lag, and somehow I miss it because it's a displacement in terms of feeling, but also displacements in terms of discover a new country where you don't know where to put yourself, because you have to face with a new mentality and discover it and get close to it. I miss it. It's like some other images. This is a series called Spy Game. Spy Game is talking about the control we have 24 hours a day, especially now, especially in the pandemic period where everybody is on computer. So computer is super controlled. Many people are leaving it as reassuring them, so they feel safe because of this control. But for me, it's always some reason to be like a worry about the control, because the control is looking to everything. The power needs to make you do something that he wants. I don't know how to explain better in a very short time. So
we have to move on, but I have to just make one comment. You know, this last work that you did for the Faenza show is looser, much more clay-like. You know, you really have gotten into another whole way of working. So thank you for being pushed into this.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure to meet you again.
Sorry that we have so short time, but next time we will talk later.
I hope so. Our next speaker is artist is I'm also very pleased to welcome. She is also an under 35 in the show, and I tell you, Jacqueline, it's really wonderful to uncover new talent. And I haven't seen you, you know, you graduated from NYU, I know, 13 years ago. And how nice.
More.
Oh, my goodness.
2006.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So wonderful to see you again and emerged in this fabulous light. And you just recently moved out of New York City, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I just moved here to Tucson about 2 months ago.
So you did a fabulous video, and I'd love to get into that, and then we can show the work, okay?
Great.
Thank you. Oh, we're going to start with the work and not the video?
Oh, no, start with the video, please.
Yeah. Let's start with Stefania. Let's start with the video.
So this is a video that my friends at Supply Unica, a great platform, showcasing ceramics, did of me exactly 1 year ago this week in my studio in Brooklyn. And I am so pleased. Thank you so much to the museum for this platform for me to showcase my work, because I've only started working again in ceramics after I graduated in 2006, in 2018. So I've only started exhibiting my work about 2 years ago. And I basically, as my day job for, over a decade, worked as a jewelry designer. And I never thought about, creating artwork again since I graduated college, because I was being practical. And so I was busy climbing the corporate ladder, and I worked really hard as a designer. And when you're designing for corporations, you are just constantly working, and there are no breaks. You're always just moving from one thing to another. And I just felt very exhausted every day, just, doing the grind of, a 9-to-5 job. Well, technically, it's more like 9 to 8 for me, I feel like. And so I started baking pastries in my downtime, just to relax myself and to just kind of recuperate from a hard work day. And that kind of led me to this sugar addiction. And I just like fell into this horrible pattern of just like constantly eating sweets to kind of, you know, as a remedy for this emotional disconnection I have with my daily work. So as I was laid off from my corporate job in 2015, I had to think about what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew that I didn't want to design full time and work, you know, a job 5 days a week anymore because it was killing my soul. And so that's when I, you know, started experimenting with other mediums. I wanted to step away from jewelry like metal and gemstones. And so I was working a lot with wax. And then eventually I decided to join a community clay studio and start working on ceramics again. The reason I didn't return to ceramics immediately was because of a lot of technical reasons. It's really hard in New York City to find a space. It's very expensive. And working in porcelain is very labor intensive. You need a lot of space, there's time, and there's firing. But eventually I found a really great studio to work in. And that's when I started developing this body of work I'm titling Death by Sugar. So we'll see later on in the slides all the different work I have created. But as you can see in this video, I have multiple steps in creating my work. Everything I do in this series, I use many different techniques. I do plaster molds. As you can see, I am cutting open one of the skulls. Here I make all my molds myself. I think having a background over, you know, a decade and a half in designing jewelry and working with factories overseas, there's something beautiful about the process of mold making. And I love that you can create one design and you can just keep casting and make the same thing over and over again. But then when you assemble it, each time it's something different. So I really enjoyed this process of working, and it's kind of mirroring all the baking that I was doing while I was, you know, really stressed out at my work. It's kind of like every time you bake something, it comes out and it's just so beautiful. And I just, you know, instead of consuming it physically, I wanted to make it in porcelain so you can kind of just admire the physical qualities of these beautiful pastries. And, you know, one thing I do a lot is I go on the internet and I'm always just scrolling through images of beautiful pastries. I mean, social media is a big influencer in my work. All of these sculptures I've been making is influenced by the anxieties of being human and, you know, the dilemmas of corporate, you know, contemporary daily life. And so I am exploring the American society of excess and shameless consumerism and social media overstimulation through my body of work. And I'm using greed and gluttony as a remedy for emotional disconnection. And I'm trying to show that through this body of artwork. And here is the piece that was selected for the Faenza Prize. And this is actually the first piece I did in the collection, and it's the biggest piece. I chose this, I call this the wedding cake. And it's inspired by these gorgeous wedding cakes I see online, just, you know, really over the top. And I just thought it was the best piece to kind of showcase this idea that I'm trying to put out. And I chose not to color any of my work because white is the color of death in Chinese culture, and I'm Chinese and I grew up in Hong Kong also. And this series of work is about the piece that I've made towards my sugar addiction. So I wanted to show this bare bone-like surface of the porcelain so you can see all the details and the intricacies. and all the time that I've spent, labor intensively assembling each piece, and, I would smooth out everything with a paintbrush. And so I want it to be evocative and peaceful at the same time. And also, I find that color is very addictive, especially, we are glued to our smartphones every day now, and just that color is just very addictive, and I want it to step away from that. It's such a fast-paced digital world out there now. We're always bombarded with, different messages, and it's very distracting. And I want it to, step away from this like consumption through social media. So I want it to pull away from that and focus on the detail, the form of the work. And hiding behind the sugary surface are subliminal messages against the overindulgent contemporary society, and how I fell also victim to this disease. Sugar is considered even more addictive than a lot of drugs out there, and I really, feel that it's something that is something I don't want to constantly be tied to. But at the same time, I want it to inject humor in my work as well, because, life is short, and I'm not going to completely stop eating sugar, even though it's really bad for everyone. I still want to eat it, but I just have to, learn how to control that day by day. So just making this work kind of allows me to work all that out emotionally.
You are the epitome of the artist as a visual philosopher, telling us what we should and should not do. Do you have still the addiction?
Yes, I do. And I go through swings. I think every month I swing back and forth.
It's very hard. Yes, you're right. And you are really pulling out aspects of society that are hidden, but yet we all subscribe to. There's the same way for all of us, no matter what country you live in. Now, the pie is this pie one is a little different. It's not piled up, it's flat, and you have a lot of skulls in this one. And I'm glad that you talked about the whiteness of the work, because I think, in contrast to Bean, who uses such color and vibrancy, you're going to a clearer, different way of approaching color, and white is a color as well. And it says it's very powerful when it's white.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think definitely whenever I make something in ceramics, I always stop to think, oh, how would I want to glaze this? And when I get the bisque firing out, I'm always stressing over, oh no, what if I glaze this one color and then fire it again and I'm not going to like it? And eventually, I've done tests where I have colored them and it just didn't come out the way I wanted to. And in the end, I decided not to color it, just to have it the way I wanted it in the beginning. And that's how I wanted to show it.
Well, you've done a great job, and congratulations for being a part of the Faenza Prize. We're looking forward to your trajectory as you move forward in your new environment in Tucson, Arizona. We're sorry to leave New York, but I understand. Claudia, this has been a fabulous series of interviews. I've really enjoyed it.
Yes, I think that we had a great panorama of different works, different situation, and I'm very pleased that all of you try to enter in your works so deeply. And yes, after the presentation of Jacqueline, I think that everybody is getting hungry, and they would like to have a cup of coffee with some pastry. And yes, there were very positive comments for all of you. And for Jacqueline, for example, your work is very provocative and tempting, and a perfect choice of the fact that you use the white color to avoid all the situation of reality and it's very interesting. This for Noemi, for example, the comments were focused on the fact that these masks are very, very dramatic for this spatial worldwide situation. And for Fausto, for example, they said that your work presented to the Faenza Prize is very visceral. So, yes, a comment, I think positive, because, you know, sometimes women are very visceral. I can assure you.
I agree.
Okay. No question for the artist, and no question neither for Judith, but many compliments. And so I would like to thank you all for this beautiful meeting, and I'm very happy that we are doing this for keep the contact with the artist and the jurors. And of course, if you like to watch the previous conversation, they are online on our YouTube channel, so they will be forever there. And just to enter from our website, and you go and find our YouTube channel. And my invitation is for next week, of course, for the 4th of February. And I personally will meet Sofia Ghileia-Lester, Francesco Ardini, Michela Benetton, Giulia Bonora, and Yon Fukazawa. So stay tuned, and let's meet next week, Thursday, 4th February, to this channel at 4 p.m. Thank you all. Thank you, Judith, for your precious coordination.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Bye.